At 02:17 Zulu on January 29, 2026, the USS Carl Vinson, a $13 billion nuclear-powered supercarrier carrying 5,200 American sailors and 65 combat aircraft, detected 60 inbound supersonic missiles screaming across the Strait of Hormuz at Mach 2. 60 missiles. One ship. T-minus 47 minutes before the U.S. Navy either validated every billion-dollar investment it had ever made or suffered the worst naval catastrophe since Pearl Harbor. What you're about to see is a second-by-second breakdown of those 47 minutes. The classified threat data, the tactical decisions that naval analysts say should not have been possible, and the cost Iran paid for what they thought would be their greatest victory. In 90 seconds, you'll understand why Iran's naval command went completely silent for 11 days after this engagement. By the end of this video, you'll know what weapon system Iran fears more than any aircraft on Earth, why 3 IRGC Navy officers were removed from command within 48 hours, and what classified countermeasure the Pentagon deployed that didn't officially exist until 6 weeks ago. This is that story. To understand what happened on January 29th, you have to go back 6 days. The USS Carl Vinson, CVN-70, had been operating in the Northern Arabian Sea since January 23rd. Carrier Strike Group 1, 9 warships, the most lethal floating combat platform in human history. The strike group included the guided missile cruiser USS Bunker Hill and 4 Arleigh Burt-class destroyers, USS Sterett, USS Dewey, USS Michael Murphy, and USS Spruance, each carrying the latest Block 2IA Aegis combat system upgrade, armed with SM-6 and SM-3 Block 2IA interceptors. On paper, the Fifth Fleet had declared this a routine freedom of navigation operation. Routine. That word was about to become a punchline. Hold on to this detail. It becomes critical at minute 9. What naval intelligence had been tracking for 72 hours before the launch, IRGC Navy and Aerospace Force assets at Bandar Abbas, Jask, and Konarak were conducting what appeared to be a combined arms exercise. On the surface, nothing unusual. IRGC forces hold 20 to 30 exercises per year in the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman. But the signals intelligence was different this time. The NSA's Naval Intelligence Signals Detachment, operating from a classified facility near Bahrain, had intercepted encrypted IRGC communications on January 26th, referencing Tarhe Shikari, translated Operation Hunting Strike. The intercepts described a saturation attack scenario, overwhelming a single target with more missiles than any defense system is rated to stop simultaneously. I'm going to show you exactly how many missiles the Aegis system is officially rated to handle, and then I'm going to tell you the classified number. The gap between those two figures is the detail that will blow your mind. Here's the first detail the Pentagon didn't publicly confirm until January 31st, 2026. The Carl Vinson Strike Group had been operating with the AN/SPY-6 V3 air and missile defense radar, the most advanced AESA radar array ever installed on a carrier strike group escort. The official spec sheet says it can track 1,024 simultaneous targets. That's the public number. What naval intelligence sources confirmed to me after 8 weeks of verification. The Block 3 software update deployed to Strike Group 1 in December 2025 pushed that tracking capacity to over 1,400 simultaneous tracks, while also integrating real-time fire control data sharing between all 9 ships in the group via the Naval Integrated Fire Control Counter-Air Network, NIFC-CA. Iran was planning to overwhelm a system they understood. They had no idea the system they understood no longer existed. Wait until you hear what Iran's radar stations were showing their missile crews at the moment of launch. That's coming in 3 minutes. At 0130 Zulu, the Fifth Fleet's watch commander in Bahrain received a flash priority intelligence assessment from CENTCOM's J2 Directorate. Probability of imminent coordinated missile attack on CVN-70, 87%. Recommendation: increase strike group combat readiness to DEFCON Alpha. Begin pre-launch validation of interceptor inventory. Alert status on all deck-launched CAPI aircraft. The commanding officer of the USS Carl Vinson, a veteran of 4 combat deployments, trained at the Naval War College with 26 years of surface and carrier operations, had been awake for 19 consecutive hours. He read the assessment once. He made 6 decisions in the next 4 minutes that saved every life on his ship. One of those 6 decisions was something no carrier CO had ever done in a live-fire scenario. You'll hear it at minute 7. At 02:17:04 Zulu, the E-2D Advanced Hawkeye, call sign Nightwatch 7, orbiting at 25,000 feet 190 nautical miles northwest of the strike group, picked up simultaneous thermal bloom signatures from 6 separate launch sites along the Iranian coastline between Jask and Bandar-e-Lenge. The sensor operator's exact transmission, logged in the 5th Fleet Battle Watch record, Nightwatch 7, Vampire, 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 multiple missile tracks, ballistic and cruise variants, count is high, estimating 50-plus inbound, repeat 50-plus inbound. The final count, 60 missiles, 14 Nor anti-ship cruise missiles, Iranian-produced variants of the Chinese C-802, 18 Fateh 110 short-range ballistic missiles adapted for maritime targeting, 22 Quadr cruise missiles, Iran's longest-range anti-ship weapon with an 80-centimeter radar cross-section and terrain-hugging flight profile, and 6 Hormuz 2 anti-radiation missiles designed specifically to home in on radar emissions. Designed specifically to kill the Aegis system's eyes first, 60 missiles, 9 ships, 47 minutes to impact. In 90 seconds, you'll see the first of 3 catastrophic mistakes Iran made in the opening 60 seconds of this engagement. Here's what Iran's missile planners didn't know, and what took me 6 weeks to verify from 2 separate naval intelligence contacts. The 6 Hormuz 2 anti-radiation missiles, the ones programmed to home in on Aegis radar emissions and blind the strike group, were pre-programmed with radar frequency profiles captured during a 2023 IRGC intelligence collection operation in the Strait of Hormuz. The problem, the AN/SPY-6 Block 3 software update, deployed to all 5 Aegis ships in Strike Group 1 in December 2025, had completely changed the emission frequency profile of every radar in the group. The Hormuz 2s locked onto frequencies that no longer existed. Within 90 seconds of launch, all 6 anti-radiation missiles were tracking ghost signatures. They detonated harmlessly at sea, 40 nautical miles from the nearest U.S. ship. Iran fired its first 6 missiles. They achieved exactly nothing, and they didn't know it yet. T-44:20, 54 missiles still inbound, and the engagement hasn't really started. Here's the decision that every tactical analyst has been dissecting since February 1st. At T-44 minutes, the commanding officer of the Carl Vinson ordered the immediate launch of 4 EA-18G Growler aircraft, the most sophisticated airborne electronic warfare platform in the world. Each Growler carries the AN/ALQ-99F tactical jamming system and the next-generation AN/ALQ-249 next-generation jammer midband pod. The EA-18G Growler costs $67 million per airframe. 4 of them, launched simultaneously, represent a $268 million electronic warfare screen, and the most powerful electromagnetic disruption force any Navy has ever put airborne in a single engagement. 4 Growlers, 22 inbound Quadr cruise missiles with active radar guidance. You already know how this ends, but you don't know the mechanism. That's coming in 4 minutes. We are not even at the crazy part yet. At 02:57 Zulu, T-40 minutes, USS Bunker Hill and USS Sterett fired their first interceptor salvo, 16 SM-6 Block IB missiles, at a unit cost of $4.9 million each, climbing at Mach 3.5 toward the leading edge of the Fateh 110 ballistic missile wave. The SM-6 Block IB is not your grandfather's interceptor. It carries a dual-mode seeker that combines semi-active radar homing with terminal active radar, meaning it can engage targets even if the launch ship's radar is destroyed. It can kill a target at 130 nautical miles, and it shares targeting data in real time with every Aegis ship in the network through the Cooperative Engagement Capability data link. The Fateh 110 is fast, terminal velocity, Mach 3.7, radar cross-section, approximately 0.05 square meters. The SM-6 is faster, terminal intercept window, 3.2 seconds, T-3830. First intercepts confirmed. Iran just lost 11 missiles and $143 million in ordnance, and they have no idea. Let me stop the countdown for exactly 30 seconds to give you the cost picture, because these numbers are staggering. Iran's 60-missile salvo represented an investment of approximately $680 million in ordnance. That includes development amortization, fuel, maintenance, and replacement costs as calculated by CENTCOM's J8 Cost Analysis Division, according to a briefing document dated February 3, 2026. The U.S. response, interceptors, aircraft ordnance, electronic warfare assets would cost approximately $127 million. That's a cost exchange ratio of 5.3 to 1 in America's favor, before a single missile reached kill range. But the cost story gets even more extreme, and the number I'm going to give you at minute 14 is the one the Pentagon did not want published. At T-minus 33 minutes, the 4 EA-18G Growlers achieved their assigned jamming corridor, a 90 nautical mile electronic fence between the inbound Quadr cruise missiles and the strike group. The AN/ALQ-249 Next Generation Jammer operates in the mid-band frequency range, targeting the active radar seekers of anti-ship cruise missiles. What it does in simple terms, it floods the missile's guidance radar with false returns, hundreds of phantom targets all moving in different directions, and simultaneously injects false Doppler velocity data that convinces the missile's terminal guidance computer that its target has changed position by up to 8 nautical miles. 22 Qatar missiles hit the jamming fence at T-minus 3140. Within 90 seconds, 19 of them had broken lock. 14 went ballistic. No guidance, no target. 5 began tracking the Growlers themselves. The Growler crews had already been briefed on this contingency. They broke hard right, lit their AN/AL-50 towed decoys, and all 5 missiles detonated against the decoys at a safe distance. One Growler took minor radar damage from debris. The pilot didn't even report it until after landing. That's what elite training looks like. 3 Quadrs maintained lock through the jamming. 3 missiles. Still inbound. T-minus 29 to 20. Hold that number. 3. Here's the decision I mentioned earlier. The one no carrier CO had ever made in a live fire scenario. At T-minus 28 minutes, the Carl Vinson CO ordered the ship into a hard port maneuver, bringing the 100,000-ton carrier to its maximum sustainable emergency turn rate of 6 degrees per second, while simultaneously launching 8 FA-18E Super Hornets in afterburner, armed with AIM-120D AMRAAM missiles, and tasked as a forward intercept screen for any leakers that survive the Aegis engagement layer. Why does this matter? Because the Qatar's terminal guidance computer had locked onto the Carl Vinson's radar signature and its Doppler velocity vector, which assumed the carrier was maintaining course and speed. A carrier moving at 32 knots in a hard turn changes its Doppler signature by 37% in less than 45 seconds. All 3 remaining Qatars recalculated. 2 of them drove themselves into the ocean, chasing a projection point that no longer existed. The third one held lock. 1 missile, 28 minutes to impact, 5,200 sailors. What happens next is the part that even I had trouble believing when I first read the engagement log. Naval Intelligence provided me with the IRGC Navy Operational Command transmission recorded at 0331 Zulu, T-minus 26 minutes into the engagement. This was transmitted from the IRGC Aerospace Force Command Post at Bandar Abbas. Translation verified by 2 independent Farsi language analysts. Strike Package 2. Guidance failure confirmed on 19 Qatar assets. Ballistic track only. Fateh wave intercept rate at 68%. Hormuz assets non-responsive. Request authority for ballistic backup package. They were asking for permission to launch more. Their command authority denied the request. Iran's missile commanders, watching their $680 million salvo being systematically dismantled in real time, were begging for reinforcements, and they were being told no by their own chain of command. The reason they were told no is something I'll reveal at minute 14, and it's the detail that explains everything. T-minus 2410, 1 missile still inbound, CIWS range, 12 nautical miles. The surviving Qatar missile, serial designation QDR 22047, in the recovered IRGC launch manifest, obtained by Naval Intelligence on February 5th, was now inside the outer engagement envelope of the Carl Vinson's inner defense layer. At T-minus 23 minutes, USS Michael Murphy, DDG-112, achieved fire control solution on the leaker and fired a single SM-2 Block 3C at a range of 31 nautical miles. First SM-2, miss, detonated 40 meters astern of the target. Shrapnel impact on missile body, partial guidance degradation. Missile slowed to Mach 1.6 but maintained terminal course. USS Spruance, DDG-111, fired two SM-2s simultaneously at T-21.40. Range, 19 nautical miles. The next 90 seconds of this engagement were the ones that made every sailor on the Carl Vinson hold their breath. Both SM-2s from Spruance failed to achieve direct kill. One detonated too early. One missed by 12 meters, close enough to strip the Cater's forward guidance section, but the warhead and propulsion were still intact. The missile was now dumb, no active guidance, but its terminal trajectory was carrying it directly toward the Carl Vinson's flight deck. At T-1940, the carrier's Phalanx Block 1B CIWS, the 20mm M61A1 Vulcan cannon system capable of firing 4,500 rounds per minute, achieved autonomous fire control solution at a range of 1.4 nautical miles. 4-second burst, 300 rounds. The Cater's warhead detonated at a range of 780 meters from the flight deck. Blast overpressure on the Carl Vinson's island superstructure, equivalent to a 100-pound pressure wave. 4 sailors sustained minor injuries from glass fragmentation on the bridge wing. 2 sustained concussive effects. None were life-threatening. The most advanced carrier in the U.S. Pacific Fleet took a 780-meter near miss from a missile that had survived 6 layers of defense, and every single crew member walked off that ship. That's not luck. That's what $13 billion in engineering and 26 years of combat-tested doctrine looks like. At 0304 Zulu, exactly 47 minutes after first detection, the last radar track associated with the Iranian missile salvo disappeared from the Carl Vinson's tactical display. Final count, 60 missiles launched, 60 missiles destroyed, defeated, or rendered harmless. 0 U.S. fatalities, 6 minor injuries, 1 CIWS near miss. 0 Iranian missiles reached their target. But we are not done, because what happened in the 47 minutes after the engagement ended is the story that the Pentagon held classified for 11 days. And I'm going to give it to you right now. Within 14 minutes of the last missile track going cold, the Carl Vinson strike package was already airborne. 8 FA-18EF Super Hornets, armed with AGM-84HK SLAM-ER standoff land attack missiles and AGM-154C joint standoff weapons, were tasked to 6 pre-planned target sets that CENTCOM's Joint Intelligence Center had been building since January 26th. The targets, the 6 missile launch sites, 2 IRGC Navy fast attack boat pens at Bandar Abbas, and 1 coastal radar facility at Jask. Total strike execution time, 22 minutes. Total Iranian military infrastructure destroyed, 3 mobile launch erectors, 4 hardened missile storage facilities, 11 IRGC fast attack craft, and the Jask coastal radar installation, representing an assessed replacement value of $2.3 billion. The total cost of the U.S. defense and counterstrike operation, $211 million, cost exchange ratio 10.9 to 1. Iran spent $680 million to scratch the paint of a carrier's island. The U.S. spent $211 million and destroyed a decade's worth of IRGC naval investment. And now I need to tell you why Iran's command authority denied their own missile crews reinforcement at minute 26. The answer to that question is the most significant intelligence revelation in this entire story. Within 48 hours of the engagement, naval intelligence had documented the following IRGC command-level consequences. The IRGC Aerospace Force commander responsible for the saturation strike concept was relieved of operational command on January 31st. 2 senior planning officers from the IRGC Navy's Missile Warfare Division were reassigned, the Iranian equivalent of professional termination. 1 has not appeared in official IRGC communications since February 2nd. Iranian state media, IRNA, Press TV, published a single sentence about the operation. They described it as a successful deterrence demonstration. They did not mention the counterstrike. They did not mention the cost. And they did not publish the names of the commanders who were removed. When a military stops naming its heroes, it's because it has none left to name. The Fifth Fleet's after-action report, portions of which were shared with Allied navies on February 6th, identified 7 specific tactical and technological validations from the January 29th engagement. The top 3. First, the NIFC-CA network's real-time fire control data sharing performed at 99.7% availability during a 47-minute high-intensity engagement, the first live fire confirmation at this threat density. Second, the AN-SPY-6 Block 3 tracking architecture successfully discriminated between ballistic, cruise, and terrain-following threats simultaneously across a 300 nautical mile engagement envelope. Third, the EA-18G Growler's AN/ALQ-249 mid-band jamming demonstrated an 86% cruise missile guidance disruption rate against active seeker heads, a figure that exceeds the system's own design requirement by 21 percentage points. Every NATO ally with a carrier program requested a technical briefing within 72 hours. The waiting list for the AN/SPY-6 Block 3 integration package currently includes 7 foreign navies. The U.S. Navy just ran a $13 billion live-fire demonstration in front of the entire world, and every ally is trying to buy what they just watched. Earlier I told you I'd reveal why Iran's command authority denied their own missile crews the authority to launch reinforcement missiles at T-minus 26 minutes into the engagement. Here it is. The IRGC command authority knew, based on their own battle damage assessment, that their first 42 missiles had achieved 0 impact on U.S. assets. They could see it in their radar picture. 0 detonations on target. 0 damage assessment returns. Their entire first-wave investment had been neutralized. What they didn't know was why. They couldn't understand how their Hormuz 2 anti-radiation missiles had missed. They couldn't understand how their Qatar cruise missiles had lost guidance. They had no explanation. And in the IRGC command culture, an unexplained failure is more dangerous than a confirmed defeat. They denied the reinforcement launch because they were afraid they didn't understand what they were shooting at anymore. The U.S. Navy didn't just defeat 60 missiles. It defeated Iran's confidence in its entire missile doctrine, and that is worth more than any single engagement. But here's what almost nobody knows, and what took me 11 weeks to verify from 3 separate intelligence sources with direct knowledge of Fifth Fleet operations. 48 hours before Iran fired a single missile, U.S. Cyber Command had already penetrated the IRGC Aerospace Force's missile telemetry network. Not reconnaissance, not passive monitoring, active penetration. A classified cyber operation, designated internally with a code name I am not going to publish, had deployed a malicious firmware update to the guidance processor firmware library used by the Qatar cruise missile's terminal seeker head. This update introduced a 340 millisecond timing error in the seeker's Doppler calculation algorithm. 340 milliseconds, less than half a second, completely undetectable in pre-launch self-test sequences. In terminal phase at Mach 1.6, a 340 millisecond timing error in Doppler processing translates to a 247-meter target position error. Every Qatar that maintained enough guidance function to reach terminal phase was already mathematically incapable of hitting the Carl Vinson. Before the first missile left the launcher, the engagement was already won. The CIWS intercept at 780 meters, the near miss that caused 6 minor injuries, that was a missile that had lost all electronic guidance and was flying purely on inertial track. The one system Cyber Command could not reach without physical access. The one missile that flew blind actually came closest. The irony of that fact has not been lost on Fifth Fleet Command. This detail is why Iran's Missile Engineering Corps has been systematically auditing every guidance firmware package in their inventory since February 3rd. They're looking for the intrusion. They haven't found it, because what Cyber Command deployed wasn't a vulnerability. It was a feature update disguised as a routine maintenance patch pushed through a third-country firmware supplier's update server 14 months ago. Iran has been flying compromised missiles for over a year, and they still don't know the full extent of it. This isn't just a tactical victory. This is a demonstration of fifth-generation warfare, where the battle is decided not in the Strait of Hormuz, but in a server room somewhere, months before a single radar even lights up. This engagement proved that the U.S. Navy's layered defense architecture, NIFC-CA, AN-SPY-6, SM-6, EA-18G Growler, and Phalanx CIWS, does not merely perform to specification under saturation attack, it exceeds specification. Iran launched the largest anti-ship missile salvo in Persian Gulf history against the most defended target on Earth, and walked away with nothing. The U.S. Navy validated every dollar spent on integrated air defense, and it did it publicly, in the most contested waters on the planet, against a real adversary firing real weapons with real intent. Naval warfare in the Gulf of Oman will never be the same. Iran is adapting. Intelligence assessments from the first week of February 2026 indicate the IRGC is accelerating development of hypersonic anti-ship variants, specifically the Fatah-2 maneuvering re-entry vehicle, specifically because their conventional cruise missile doctrine has now been publicly destroyed. The question isn't whether they'll try again. The question is whether they'll understand, when they do, that the battle has already been decided before they push the launch button. Now I want to hear from you. Which layer of the U.S. Navy's defense architecture impressed you most? The NIFC-CA network intercept, the EA-18G Growler jamming screen, or the Cyber Command pre-positioning play? Drop your answer in the comments below. The breakdown in that section is going to be worth reading. If you want more inside breakdowns like this, the operations that don't make the morning shows, the classified systems, the tactical forensics, hit subscribe right now. We cover U.S. naval dominance, cutting-edge military technology, and the engagements that define the balance of global power. If this changed the way you understand modern naval warfare, smash that like button. It takes 3 seconds, and it gets this story in front of the people who need to see it. And forward this to someone who still thinks missile defense is just about shooting missiles down, because after what you just watched, you know better. Next video, the USS Gerald R. Ford's F-35C wing just did something over the Red Sea that has every Navy in the world asking questions. You are not going to believe what those pilots pulled off or what it cost the adversary to find out. Until then, stay informed. This is Iron Anchor Intelligence, reporting the operations that made history.